Welcome to Body by Design. I'm your host, Blue Driver, a women's strength training and metabolism coach. I went from years suffering hormone imbalances, looking soft and bloated, to symptom-free and building muscle for a toned athletic physique. Since then, I've made it my mission to empower women to take control of their own health, hormones and body composition. So grab a cup of coffee and let's build your body by design.
Hello and welcome back to the Body by Design podcast. I'm Lou Driver, your host. I just want to take a quick moment to ask something very special of you, and that is to pause the podcast, whether you're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or any other platform. Pause and hit that subscribe or follow button, because this helps the podcast get out to more women just like you who need the help of this information, and also it helps me get better guests on to interview. So hit that subscribe button now. So let's get into today's podcast, and this one's going to be a little more of a personal journey podcast. I've had a lot of people asking me recently about my back injury and what I did to come back from that. And then recently I've mentioned that I'm going to be doing a deficit, and there's been a lot of questions around that. So I thought I would just do a bit of a podcast explaining where my body composition has been for the last 2 years, because I've been through a lot, and it's probably been the hardest 2 years of my life after building up an amazing physique and doing a photo shoot and feeling fabulous. And then shit hit the fan pretty much. Life happens. And I ended up in adrenal fatigue. And then I had a back injury. And then I had a shoulder injury. And now I'm finally at a deficit. So let's walk through that, and I'm going to talk body fat percentages and the types of weights I had and things like that, so you can understand where I'm at and why it's taken me so long to get into a position where I can deficit again to bring my body fat down, and why I brought my body fat up in the first place. And that was very intentional. So back in January 2024, I actually did a big photo shoot, but I'd spent 2 years prior to that doing a really big build phase, throwing in some mini cuts, and then I did a really big deficit at the end of it to strip me down. Now, that photo shoot, I got down to 12% body fat, and it was never the intent to stay there. It's called photo shoot lean, stage lean, and I just didn't. It's not healthy for a woman's body to be down there. So 12% really is way too low for a body to be healthy to get down there. And for me in particular, I wasn't feeling great down at that body fat percentage. And the reason for that is Dean and I, my partner, have been through some really tough years. And I'm talking years of child custody battles that were really, really nasty. He did lose his children, which was really sad in all of that. Then he got cancer twice, and the first doctor that operated on him missed all the cancer, didn't read the results. There's a whole podcast on it. So if you want that podcast, just scroll back and you'll find it. It's the history of Dean and I. So there was some massive life factors in there that I couldn't remove that stress from my life. And that was all through the period where I was doing that build and that big deficit. So I came out of the deficit, did the photo shoot. 12% is really an unrealistic body fat percentage for anyone to maintain, for any woman to maintain. And on top of that, I had been through some major stress. So I wanted to bring my body fat back up again and do some more building, because I'd also lost a lot of muscle through that deficit phase. It was a long deficit. And even though I was training hard and doing everything with nutrition, stress took its toll. And stress is a motherfucker, let me tell you now. It will prevent you from building muscle. It will eat muscle away. It will play with your strength. It will damage your sleep. All those things that you need to have a healthy, optimal body to build and hold muscle were working against me. I still got results. I still built muscle. I still had an amazing photo shoot. Could it have been better? Could I have had more muscle? Could I have kept more muscle through the deficit? Absolutely. But I still made progress. However, I finished that photo shoot and didn't feel good. Now, I want you to hear that. There is no point looking good if you don't feel good. And I personally don't think that on a day-to-day basis was a good look. Looks great in photos when you're posing and flexing and getting the right angles and light. But on a day-to-day basis, it didn't look good because I'd lost a bit of muscle mass in that too from all of the stress. So my plan from there was, right, let's bump the body fat up to about the 15%. I think I ended up sitting at around 16%, feeling really good, and build back some lean mass. And I did build some lean mass back. So this was through the first 6 months of 2024. But by about the June, so I initially started feeling a bit better because I was feeding myself up and the muscle mass was starting to come back. Things were still going on in life. And I got to the June and I was like, this just doesn't feel good anymore. And I wasn't progressing in the gym. I was stalling and I had this fatigue that wouldn't go away. And I went down this big rabbit hole. I knew that there was something more going on with my body, and I ate right. I trained right. I wasn't in a deficit. I was doing everything I possibly could to look after myself, all the supplements that are supportive. And I went beyond this. There is something going on with my body. And I went down a functional nutrition rabbit hole. I discovered I had adrenal fatigue. So through all the years of stress, I had gone from living in excessive high cortisol constantly for years to now my cortisol had tanked and I was in adrenal fatigue. So I took on some functional nutrition studies with a well-known and big name American functional practitioner. And in that process also worked with him to heal my own body. And as much as that had been really hard to go through, and adrenal fatigue takes a long time to come back from, your markers will come back at around 6 months, your blood markers and stuff, but essentially you've probably got a good year before you build any resilience under your body. Again, depending on how bad it was, how quickly you respond, how adherent you are, all those sorts of things. Obviously, there's lots of variables, but it takes a long time to come back from that. So I worked with him and I got an amazing education, and I do, which, as the years have gone by, I have been able to use this education that I did. I didn't just seek someone to fix me. I sought out someone that would also educate me. So I did his courses as well as worked with him to heal my body. And I've been able to implement that into my own practices. So in my private space, I've got the midlife muscle method. And in the private space, I will do lab work and protocols for women as well who have been through a lot and may have thyroid issues, Hashimoto's, endometriosis, estrogen dominance in a lot of cases, adrenal issues, whether it's high cortisol, low, gut issues. I do all of that sort of stuff with them. So I really did gain some amazing things out of something that was very hard to go through. So that's to set the foundation there that I had adrenal fatigue and I needed to resolve this. So when I discovered this, I'd gone from 12% body fat at the photo shoot and I was about 57 kilos, maybe 56. I think I touched down at 56. And I brought my body fat back up to around, I've got some notes here. I brought myself back up to around the 58, 59 kilo mark and was sitting at 16% when I discovered I had the adrenal fatigue. Now, my body looked great, but I didn't feel good at all. And part of the process was intentionally eating in a small surplus and having a body fat percentage above 20%. To allow my body to heal. So giving it that surplus food as well as the combined body fat percentage needed to be higher. So I went through that process and I brought my body fat up so that was mid 2024. By January 2025, I was sitting around I hovered around the 20 to 22% in that time. So I was sitting up around there. I had built some muscle back, which was nice, but I did spend a period of time of about 3 months where I couldn't train because the fatigue was so bad, 3 or 4 months. So it took me a while to get back into the swing of things. So in the January of 2025, I was sitting at a much higher body fat percentage of 20 to 22%. Not that that is, terrible. That's actually a very reasonable body fat percentage, but it was a very big difference from where I had been. And I had brought back some muscle mass, but it wasn't great. From there, I was able to come back to maintenance. I didn't have to continue to be in a surplus, and I just made sure I was eating everything, getting sunlight, getting sleep, and I was able to train hard again. And that was the difference from the June through to the January. I stopped training for a good 3 to 4 months. And then when my training came back, it was quite light. I wasn't pushing. I was, really managing that fatigue. So by the January 25, I was able to start really pushing in the gym again. So I brought my calories back to maintenance. So I didn't need to bring any more body fat up. and just pushed hard. And it worked really well in the sense that I wouldn't call it body recomposition because the muscle mass was still a little bit hard to build. But by the April, I was looking down the barrel of we're about to go to Europe and I would really like to look good. And I'd brought my body fat back a little bit just by training hard because my body just started using a hell of a lot more calories. So my body fat had started to come down and I was sitting at around 18% body fat and about 60, I think it was about 62 kilos and 18% body fat. It was something like that. And I wanted just to tighten up a little bit to go to Europe. It was European summer and we had planned this trip for both mine and Dean's 50th. We were kind of Dean's 2 years older than me and we were like halfway in between. And this was like our big celebration year, 1 year after his birthday, 1 year before mine. And we had planned this for a couple of years. I did test in the April. I did test going into a slight deficit. I wasn't going to do a big one, just went to about 10% and went, what can I do over the next few weeks? Just at 10% to just tighten up a bit. And my body really was not responsive. It did not like it at all. And it just told me that I was not quite ready to go into a deficit. And you have to listen to that when I wasn't really responding. And then I was getting, the fatigue was setting in really quite easily, that the strength in gym would go down quite easily. And that was my indicator that my body is not resilient enough, although I don't have the adrenal fatigue technically now. And I was building back. A deficit is a stressor on the body and it just wasn't ready for it. So that was about the April in January 2025. So I just continued to train really hard up until we went to Europe. And the plan was to come back. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll go to Europe. It's all good. And I'm going to be very clear. I've never been unhappy with my body. Okay. Do I want it to be different? Sure. Do I think I'm too big, too much body fat, anything? No. None of that is an issue. It's just personal preference. And ultimately, I wanted to build more muscle. But yes, I did want to tighten up with a little bit of a deficit. And keeping in mind, I hadn't been in a deficit at this point, a year and a half. So I didn't work, went to Europe, and the plan was, well, missed that window now. I'll just continue building till about the September, October, and then I'll just see if my body will respond again in the October and do a bit of a mini cut, even end of October. So give myself some more time to keep pushing because I could see that my resilience was building. So I thought I'll push a little bit more, just continue with the building. The more muscle I bring back, the more metabolically resilient I will get. So I continued to nourish, get sunlight, focus on my sleep, push hard in the gym because I was able to do that. That's what I'll do until the end of October. And then I'll see if I can do a little bit of a mini cut coming into the Australian summer. So went to Europe. Came back, didn't gain any weight, didn't really gain any body fat, had an amazing time, ate all the food, and I actually hadn't trained in 5 weeks. For the whole time that we were away in Europe, it was a decision I had made to not train while we were away. We were moving every couple of days, and to throw training in there as well was going to chew up a lot of time for a big holiday that we had planned for. So I decided not to train, but we were doing 20 to 30,000 steps a day, keeping very, very active. And we had the best time. And I come back feeling amazing. And I'm like, I can't wait to get into this build. And my body felt different after being over there. And I think it was like a month away, just relaxing, just that last piece that I needed. We'd been through so much over the years. I'd also been building a business and it was time just for Dean and I to reconnect and have an amazing time. And that in itself is a big change to your body and the stress levels that you have. So it did the right thing. I come back feeling amazing. Unfortunately, as I started to train, it wasn't training, but my back I've always had back issues many, many moons ago. So I'll talk about the back issue story. I really haven't spoken. It was on social media, but I haven't done an actual podcast around this. So I came back from Europe and I started bringing my training back up. But because I hadn't trained for 5 weeks, it takes time to build that strength base back up. And I was training and my back really felt not right from the beginning of coming back from Europe. It was niggly. I've always had back issues about, I don't know, I think maybe 15 years ago. I was doing a Les Mis pump class, throwing weights around, and I did bulge a disc. Turns out that compromised kind of the outer shell of the disc. And over the years, though the protrusion of the disc improved when I learned how to strength train properly and get strength in my core and my back, it actually improved. The integrity of the disc had been compromised. And the long haul flights in airplane seats and not being able to have good posture and all that can actually put a lot of stress on your disc. So it was like a 36-hour trip over to Europe, and we did 24 hours coming home. One of the stints on the plane was actually 18 hours. It was actually when Donald Trump was throwing bombs around in the Middle East, and our planes were diverted and had to take different paths and delayed. And there was one in-air section where we were in the air for 18 hours sitting on a plane. And it turns out that put a lot of pressure on my disc. And my disc was slowly, the cracks were coming apart and my disc was slowly exploding. And it started with like my back was a little bit niggly, but then I had this glute pain that I was like, that's really quite irritating. I'll just stop walking for this week, because I thought maybe the walking was irritating it. So I pulled up on my steps for the week. This was in the end of July. And so I'd been home for a few weeks, and this was really starting to ramp up. And then when that didn't work, I went, right, well, I'm not trying. I think I went, right, I'll stop training this week and give my glute a rest. And then after a week, it wasn't any better. It kind of felt like it was worse, even though I wasn't training. So I stopped the walking. I went, oh, I won't walk this week either. And then by that point, it was a little bit worse. Again, it was starting to go down my hamstring. So I took myself off to the doctor and went, I think it's piriformis. He agreed, referred me to a physio. The physio went, yeah, not a problem. Here's some exercises, go and do it. Well, within 2 or 3 days of doing those exercises, I couldn't walk. It was horrendous, absolutely horrendous. The weird part was it was a lot in my glute and hamstring, but now it was starting to go right down my leg. And it was like every time I moved, my glute would contract down and literally spasm and crush the sciatica nerve, but it was coming from the disc had exploded, was crushing the nerve. The nerve was also now stuck and it couldn't slide the way it should at the back level. And when the nerve is like that, it will put in protection mechanisms so so it doesn't get moved more. So it was contracting down on my glute. This is all the things we realize now, but it was contracting down on my glute and going down into my hamstring. So I took myself back off to my doctor, and my beautiful, beautiful GP that I normally go to was away on holidays. So I just got whoever was available and off I went to the doctor's. And and I was like, I'm actually really concerned it was sciatica. My regular GP had asked me about it. I went, oh, I don't think so. I think it's more just in my glute, because it didn't feel the same as what it had done in the past with my protruded disc. So it was a little bit tricky. Anyway, I came back to this other doctor and went, I am actually now concerned that it's my back. I'd like to get my back scanned. No, she assured me time and time again, because there was no numbness in my foot and it wasn't getting better, it was getting worse. It was not sciatica. No, she was adamant that it was not sciatica. So she sent me off for an ultrasound on my hip. In the meantime, I had scheduled an appointment with my physio, the needle guy, Jim Bostock, and he's down in Brisbane, but it is a flight to get there. But I was getting desperate by this stage because I could barely move. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go and see Jim. If this is a glute lockup, I'll go and see Jim, because the doctor was telling me definitely not sciatica. So keep in mind, I'm not training, I'm not walking or anything at this point. So I go and get the ultrasound. She calls me in. By this stage, I can't even drive. So I'm getting, Dean had already taken time off work. Now my girlfriend was taking time off work to get me into the doctor's surgery. So she just sent a text message saying, come and get your results. So off I went in again. It would take me 3 or 4 minutes to sit, 3 or 4 minutes to stand, because every time I moved, I'd stand a little and then that glute would cramp down. And I can only liken it to being in labor, those cramps, like they would build and build. And I would be stuck in that position where I've slightly started to stand up, and I'd have to wait for that cramping to stop before I could move again. It was just horrendous that every time I moved, everything would cramp up. And it was my back, my glute, all the way down my hamstring, starting to move into my calf. Doctor goes, nothing on the scan, nothing wrong with your hip, no tears in your glutes. Yeah, just take that trip to Brisbane. I'm like, oh, fuck, how am I going to get down to Brisbane? Anyway, I managed to do it. It was extremely painful. And I saw Jim and he did his needlework and there was a little bit of relief because the glutes had been getting overworked in the spasming. So there was a little bit of a relief. So the flight home was a little more comfortable. But he said to me, he's like, I'm really concerned about this. This is, and I asked when I got the results, I'm like, are we sure we don't want to, like, I really feel like I should go and have a scan on my back. No. So that was the second time she refused. Said, no, it's not sciatica. Go see your physio in Brisbane if that's what you want to do. But she had no other solutions for me. So I'm taking anti-inflammatories, I'm taking pain medication off down to Brisbane. And Jim is just like, no, I'm really concerned for you. You have to go back and push for that scan. He said it must be done. So I take myself back off to, well, I don't take myself. Dean takes another day out of work, takes me off to the doctor. By this time, he was actually working from home because I was so incapacitated. Like I literally could not walk, that he couldn't leave me alone. So he had to request to work from home. And we were a couple of weeks in from him working from home. So he takes me back to the doctor. And again, she refused to do the scan. I'm like, I've been and seen him. It's still getting worse again. He did a phone call follow-up and I was like, nah, Jim, it felt a little bit better to begin with, but now it's even worse. He called me on a Sunday, bless him. And he was like, nah, definitely get in and get that scan done. You're going to have to find someone who will do it for you. So I asked for it again and she was refusing. And Dean, who doesn't like confrontation and doesn't say much about much most of the time, literally stepped in and went, I'm pouring my partner into bed every night. I'm having to carry her to bed and she's in absolute tears by the end of the day. She can't walk. At this point, I was considering crawling on hands and knees to our shower recess to go to the bathroom and just leave Dean to clean it up because the standing and the sitting, like just to get to the, because I'd have to stand up off, I'd have to go from a laying position to sitting, which was horrendous, to then try and stand, to then try and walk, to get to the toilet, to sit down, stand up, go through all of that again, get back to the couch, it was utterly exhausting, the pain that I was in. And again, if anyone out there has experienced natural labor, it was like the height of labor, like just before you're about to give birth. That's what it was like. Every time I moved, it was contractions like that. So she was refusing again. And then Dean stepped in. She said, well, if you want an MRI, I'll do it on your hip, but I'm not doing it on your back. And Dean stepped in and went, no, you will. And she said, well, you're going to have to pay for it. Stupid part is we were paying for all these scans anyway. So he said, fine, we don't care. You will do the scan. So I went off and did the scan. By this stage, I was at about 7 weeks of not walking. So I've done 7 weeks, no gym, literally not walking. I'm barely eating because the pain was that horrendous that I felt sick. Then go and get the scans done. And I get a text message that just said, non-urgent, come and get your results. And I was like, this is ridiculous. And when I looked online, she wasn't available for about 5 days. And I was like, nah. I'm just going to grab whoever again because I'm not happy with her. So I just grabbed someone who could see me the next day, went in there. She already had the scans open. And as I walked in, hobbled in, I should say, because it was, the whole, and it was so embarrassing. Everyone watching me in the waiting room trying to stand up because it's 2 or 3 minutes and I'm not exaggerating. When I say it was 2 or 3 minutes to stand up. So hobbled into the consult room and she's got my scans up and she went, sit, stand, lay, please do whatever you need to do. I'm like, no, I'll just stand. I don't want to have to sit again. And straight away she was like, you have a severe rupture on your S1L5. This needs to be addressed immediately. I'm sending a referral to the surgeon right now. And then when you leave, I'll be calling them. So they will be aware that this is an urgent referral. And when you get home, you call them and make the appointment. And then she was like, and I'm redoing all of your pain medication. This is nowhere near adequate for you. And to be honest, I don't even think this is going to work. And if this doesn't work, you need to go to the hospital and get admitted for pain management because this is how bad we had gotten. And it was a severe rupture. So they go by the amount of the rupture and it was a 13 millimeter rupture. So it was huge. And this is the state I'd been left in. By the next day, I had a consult with the surgeon. I did have a cortisone injection as well, which provided some relief because I said to Dean, I said, how am I going to get on a plane if I have to go and have surgery? If that's what the surgeon says, how am I going to get on a plane? Like, there was no way known I'd gotten that. I know I'd been down to Brisbane a few weeks earlier, but it was just getting worse and worse. And there was no way known I was getting on a plane. But the GP did go, here's a cortisone injection. And they put me in as urgent for that as well. So I was able to get the cortisone injection the next day. I saw the surgeon and he basically just went, can get on a plane this weekend, because this was on the Thursday. He said, get on a plane this weekend. It was that bad that he arranged additional theatre time and called in an anaesthetist to work on the Monday, which is not his normal operation day. He said, I need to get you in and get this done as soon as possible. So I flew down, had the surgery, felt amazing is what it came to. But I spent 8 weeks not walking. Like literally not walking. I literally laid on a couch all day, and even on the couch, I didn't want to move because it was so painful for 2 months. So that was my experience. And as you can imagine, body composition was not the best by the end of all of this. So then I had the surgery, and obviously I had, just stuff that I was meant to be doing at home, but it was like, don't walk for more than 5 minutes at a time, and then 10 minutes. And then so I was stretching things out. By the time I got to November 1st, so end of October, I was cleared to go back to rehab. So I can start training again. However, we're talking about, if you're doing a lunge, you're holding a 2-kilo weight, or you're doing body weighted lunges. So that was as of November 1st. I was able to go back and start my rehab, my proper rehab. And in November, I've got notes here. What was it? In the November, I ended up I gained no weight in this. So the scale never changed. But when you look at my photos, you can absolutely see the difference. And my body fat had gone from around the 18% to nearly 21%. And my lean mass, I'd lost 2.5 kilos of lean mass. I was just from not moving. So that was November last year. 21% body fat, lean mass, I lost 2.5 kilos, started my rehab process. From the January, I was back to being able to push to a failure, but my weights weren't huge because I'd lost so much strength and lean mass. So I had to build that back up. But at least by the January, I was able to actually push to failure where I wasn't doing that before. So that was in January this year. And I have just continued to keep my maintenance calories. So I built my maintenance up as I started to move more. I could eat more, because at one point I was eating about, I don't know, maybe 1,500 calories because I just didn't move. I'd eat breakfast in the morning, wouldn't really eat during the day because I didn't move, then have some dinner. Even then it was a bit like, oh, and then go to bed. So I hadn't been eating much either. So I had to rebuild my metabolic capacity and my metabolic health from the lack of nutrients going in, but I literally couldn't move, couldn't do, like it was really hard. So once I started moving again, I was able to focus on nourishment, getting optimal. And my goal was I want to be back at my previous maintenance calories, which was 2350, doing 10,000 steps and training to failure in the gym. Whatever my numbers were in the gym, it didn't really matter as long as I was back to capacity of mechanical failure, which is what I was aiming for. And around January was where that was. So I came back quite quickly, and the surgeon was so surprised when he saw me. He was like, I can't believe how quickly you have responded to this and how amazing you look. He's a lifter himself. He's a runner and a lifter. He was like, absolutely. There were a few things he said to me, like, don't do barbell squats. So don't load your spine from the top. Be very, very careful with deadlifts. So still today, I'm not doing a traditional barbell squat and I'm not deadlifting. I am doing RDLs on a Smith machine and I'm doing single legs. So the load is less. So I've done a lot of things to work around that. I probably could go back to a squat and a deadlift if I wanted to, but I'm making amazing progress. So I'm not worried about the actual type of movement. So a couple of little restrictions there that I could probably test the boundaries on, but it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. But he was so astounded at how quickly I recovered and came back. And I put that all down to everything. And I mean, my midlife muscle method is what I pretty much use. I've done a podcast on that. What am I doing? How am I using my method to come back from this? So there's actually a specific podcast on what I did. So the process I use for women in my program, I took those exact step-by-step process and principles and applied them. And the surgeon was just like, I've never seen anyone improve like this before. Like, just literally, I've never seen anyone. And he said, your strength, the way you do your nutrition, because we had a lot of conversations around that. He said, absolutely have contributed to this. And I wish more of my patients would be like this. So it really did save me having that foundation and that knowledge and just applying that process. So where am I today? So now I've gotten to, we're now June 2026, and I have just entered a deficit. Oh, no, actually, one more thing happened. There we go. I forgot about that one, didn't I? So that was in the January, and I was training really hard. And then when was it? I think it might have been March. I went, right, I feel like I'm really ready for it. And I was training hard. My goals were to get back to my previous strength markers, get back to my previous lean muscle mass. They were the two main things. Optimize myself, get my strength back to where it was before, get my lean mass back to where it was before, and then I would look at a deficit. So notice what came first: bringing my food up and nourishing myself, making sure I had strength, making sure I had lean mass. All of that came first before I went, oh, body fat, jump in a deficit. And I was not happy with the way I was looking. I didn't feel great because of the lack of muscle mass in there. So it wasn't go and diet. It was do the process of building your muscle back. And in that process, initially I gained, so I didn't gain weight when I wasn't walking, but when I started back and started training and I was back at maintenance, the scale did go up, but I didn't panic because it was literally lean mass going up and my body fat wasn't really going in. In fact, it was starting to come down even though the scale initially went up. So at one point I tipped 64 kilos, but my muscle mass had come back up to what it originally was. And I was like, right, now I feel like I can do a deficit. And I felt resilient, felt like I was past all the adrenal fatigue. I had resiliency. I had my strength back. I healed so quickly. And then the week that I entered the deficit, I tweaked my pec minor and shoulder, and I was like, oh, I'll be right. Because it was just a little bit of a tweak. It didn't come on. Within 2 weeks, I was walking like this. I was holding my arm up, almost like it was in a sling. If you're on Spotify listening and you're not on YouTube watching, I was holding my arm up in a sling like I couldn't do steps even. So the deficit I was in were low calories, and I did lose a little bit of weight. I think I lost about 1.5 kilos in the initial stages, but it got to the point where my output of steps and training, I ended up stopping training again. I literally couldn't do anything because I couldn't move my arms. So I wasn't even able to do lower workouts. So doing a pendulum squat, it hurt to have anything on my shoulders. Doing an RDL pulls from your shoulder, like you're not that you should let your shoulder fall forward, but like you're trying to, the action of putting my shoulder back and locking down my scapula was excruciating. So I ended up having a scan on that, and I had quite a big tear on my pec minor and bursitis in my shoulder. So I went through, lots of physio and all that and rest and letting that calm down. So my calories stayed low because I wasn't doing the output, but obviously it wasn't a deficit anymore, which I was well aware of because the output wasn't there. Got through that about a month, 6 weeks later, got back into training, and here I am again. So now I'm going to give it another go again. So currently I am sitting at, what were my numbers? I am 62.5 kilos and I am 18 body fat. So I am entering a deficit, and I have entered this week. And like last time when I hurt my shoulder, my body was quite responsive, really responsive, which was a great, like in that first week. So in the first week I hurt my shoulder, but my output was still there and the deficit was there and my body was super responsive. So I knew that I was past all the adrenal fatigue and my body was ready for this. And here is the difference. I felt resilient. I had energy. I was strong. It was sleeping well. No perimenopause symptoms. My energy was good. I was getting sunlight. That's when I knew that I could do a diet. It's just unfortunate that I hurt my shoulder. And by the way, that shoulder, that pec tear was a training injury. First one I've ever had that's directly a training injury, and it was my own fault. I got too excited too soon and I was chasing a PB when I shouldn't have been probably, and I hurt myself on the incline press machine. My fault. Did something silly, and I did it in training. And yeah, that's the first one I've ever had in all my years of training. So it's been really good, really, really good. So I felt good and my body was responsive. And I could see in my own data that my body was responsive. And this is one of the things we do in the midlife muscle method is we take the data of all of your body fat, lean muscle mass, the way you're training with the data of your metabolic health and marry them together to know what decisions to make, to know which way is the pathway for you. So if we know where you are now and what your metabolic health is telling you, what your data is telling you, and we know where you want to go, then we just bridge that pathway. And this is what we do in the midlife muscle method. And I felt amazing. I just hurt my shoulder. So now, months down the track again, and we're doing it again. And again, my body is being quite responsive. I'm only a couple of days in. I've already seen some response already. So I'm feeling really, really happy about that. So I am doing a mini cut for those of you who are interested. I am actually doing a mini cut. So this is a 30% deficit. It's a very aggressive deficit. And I'm doing a couple of different things this time. So I'm also being a little bit of a guinea pig in this. I know that traditionally my body, when I go into a deficit, the first thing that goes is my strength, and it's carbs that though protein builds muscle, carbs give you the energy within the gym. And I've always been really reliant on the carbs to push my training energy. And when they come quite low, in a deficit, I find training really hard. And if you can't push hard in the gym, you're not creating the stimulus to say, keep muscle. I have traditionally gone down the pathway of 2.2 to 2.5 grams of protein per kilo of body weight. So I was up on the high end of protein. But to do this deficit, I'm not trying to build lean mass. I'm trying to maintain it. Because remember, the last time I did it and I was in a lot of stress, I lost a lot of muscle mass, and I don't want to do that this time. So my way of thinking is studies will show you that 1.8 to 2.2, anywhere up to 2.5 even, will grow muscle. There's even studies out that say as low as 1.6 grams of protein per kilo of body weight. So remember, I'm using metric system here. So per kilo of body weight is enough to grow muscle. So I've come down to 1.8 to 2 grams of protein. So really lowered my protein back to allow me to have enough carbs through this deficit. And then the other thing I've done is gone aggressive, but the phase is going to be much shorter because I find that I fatigue the longer I'm in it. So again, my history and my data and my biofeedback tells me what sort of dieting style is going to work for me. And as our bodies change and adapt, they react differently as well. So previously, I'd done 16 weeks and I'd done 23 weeks and I kept the protein really high. And I'm just finding that they are really stressful on my body. Now, I have some women in my program that thrive in a deficit. They're still getting PBs at the end. And I'm like, how the hell are you doing that? And they're grinding it out. So the high protein works for them. I find for myself, and I see it in other clients as well. I've got other clients that are very similar, that the fatigue gets to them. So I am now bringing protein down. I am still within the range of muscle building, but I actually only want to maintain because at my physique level and my ability level, trying to build muscle in a deficit is not a reality anymore. You need maintenance or a lean build to build muscle when you've been training and get to certain strength markers. So the studies will show, and when I read my feedback, but studies give you that great range. So I was on the top end. I wasn't excessive protein, but I was certainly on the top end. Now I'm bringing my protein right back to the bottom end. Studies will still show you will grow muscle at that point, but I need to be able to provide the stimulus. So the stimulus is when you work hard at the gym and push your muscles and say, hey, grow. The protein allows it to grow afterwards in recovery. So if I don't have enough carbs going into the gym and I fatigue, then I'm not creating enough stimulus. I'm not pushing my muscle hard enough to say grow. So it doesn't matter how much protein's there because I haven't given it the signal to grow. The gym says signal grow. The protein is what grows it in recovery in the days when you aren't training, in the 24 to 48 hours afterwards, but you have to trigger it with the signal. And that happens with how hard you work. So are you training with intensity? Are you training to failure? Are you training with mechanical tension? And that is going to take energy. And that comes from carbs. So I'm doing my own little experiment. I'm dropping my protein back, but still staying within ranges and maintaining my carbs. So this deficit, I've gone down to 1,650 calories. It's a 30% reduction on my 2,350, but my carbs is remaining at 200 grams of carbs, which is awesome, which is really, really good. And I'm able to keep my training meal still around the same as what I normally have. My post-training meal is a little bit smaller. My breakfast and my lunch are smaller, but I am not expending a lot of energy at the beginning of the day. So I will keep you up to date on socials with how this goes. But because it is an aggressive deficit, I also can't stay in it for long. So I'm doing 6 weeks, and that's where I'm at. I will report back to you. I will give you updates on social media. So follow me on Instagram at strengthtraining.nutritionist. And if you got anything out of this podcast that really resonates with you, take a screenshot, share on Instagram, and please tag me to help get the message out there as well. That always helps. And until the next episode, we'll see you.